In this lesson, we'll learn about using the live paint features inside Illustrator. Alright, so up until now we've been painting our objects with a fairly traditional technique of selecting an object and applying a color to it. Now, Illustrator actually includes a totally different method of applying color to artwork, and it is going to sort of require a change in thinking from what we're used to. Now, we've been used to thinking about objects in terms of their stacking order on our artboard. Now, we know that this object here is on top of this object back behind it. So, live paint actually works a little bit differently. It's going to actually completely ignore the stacking order of objects. It actually thinks of them all in the same stacking order. There is no front, there is no back. It essentially flattens them. Now, in order to actually begin live painting this artwork, we're going to need to create what's known as a live paint group. Now, notice here that none of these objects are grouped together. These are all just single objects here. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and select all of this artwork here, and there's a couple of different ways we can create a live paint group. We can either come up here to Object and choose Live Paint and choose Make. And you can see the keyboard shortcut for that is Alt-Control-X. Or we can come over here to our tool panel and grab the Live Paint Fill bucket here with our keyboard shortcut K. We'll just go ahead and grab that here, and we can just click anywhere on our artwork in order to make a live paint group. And you can see here that there is a little bit of red text next to my cursor that says click to make a live paint group. So let's go ahead and do that in the fashion that I mentioned first here by coming to Object, Live Paint, and Make. And I want you to notice here the changes that occur when to our selection. Now, notice here that we have some changes here to the transform controls. They look just a little bit different for this live paint group. In addition, if we come over here and take a look in our appearance panel, we're going to see now that this is now a live paint group. Now, live paint groups work a little bit different than other groups, so let's go ahead and just dive right in here and get started and begin to recolor some of this artwork. Now, we can actually come in. There's two main tools for working with a live paint group. We have our live paint bucket, which we've already talked about, and we've got a live paint selection tool, which the keyboard shortcut for is Shift-L. Let's go ahead and start with that one here. Now, if we select this tool, you can see here what our cursor looks like. We can actually come in and customize how we select live paint selections. We can either select fills, strokes, or both, and we have some highlighting options here as well. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Now, I know that said it selects fills and strokes, but for all intents and purposes, live paint doesn't think about fills and strokes. It thinks about faces and edges of objects. So any area on the inside of an edge is going to be considered a face, and any area on the outside which may look like either a stroke or, a path or a path segment would be called an edge to an object. So let's come in here and select some different objects here. Let's come in and select the face for this object. And you can see here that we get a very tightly knit pattern of dots, and we can come in and select the edge for another object here. So I've selected that edge. You can see here with that same selection, and you can see as I mouse over different areas we can select, we're getting a red highlight around those areas. The faces are coming up with a little black triangle next to my cursor. The edges actually come up with a little gray triangle there. So it's telling us what the different portions of our live paint group are. So I tell you what, let's come over here and let's go ahead and begin painting our live paint group with the live paint bucket. Now, before we start painting this artwork, let's go ahead and take a look at some options here for the live paint bucket. We can actually tell it we want to paint just fills, just strokes, or both of the two. And we have an option here for a cursor swatch preview, which is those little swatches that appear above my cursor. We also have some highlighting options here for the live paint bucket. So let's go ahead and hit OK on this. And notice here right now the cursor swatch preview is set to no color. So let's go ahead and use the arrow keys on our keyboard to cycle through some of the swatches we have saved. And maybe we want to recolor this from different colors of green to different colors of orange here. So let's go ahead and just cycle through our swatches till we find those oranges. There we go. Here's some nice colors. Just continuing to cycle through these until we get to some colors we're looking for, and I think we'll start here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select this orange right here and just mouse over this face of this object and just click with the live paint bucket, and you can see it just drops that color right in. So we can come in here and very intuitively begin painting the different areas of this artwork using our live paint bucket. Now, if we want to switch over to a different color, we just use our arrow key to find that color, and maybe we start painting in some of these other colors in our art, or these other faces in our artwork this color. Now, because we have selected that we can paint both the edges and the faces of our objects, we can actually just notice the change in our cursor when we mouse over a face compared to when we mouse over an edge. You can see here that it changes from a paint bucket over to a little paint brush, indicating that we're mousing over the edge of an object. So again, just continuing to come through here and just click on some of these faces. Now notice there are some smaller areas in here that are not getting picked up on so easily. So we can come in and just zoom in on those, or we have actually the option with the live paint tool to actually detect and fill in some gaps. So you know what, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the gap detection options for this tool. So let me just come up here and choose Object, Live Paint, and I'm going to choose Gap Options right here. Now notice we get another dialog that comes up, and right now the gap detection for the tool is set to for the paint to stop at small gaps. Now we can actually change that to stop at medium or large gaps, or we can come down here and specify a custom gap size. We can also change the color for the gap preview as well. So let's go ahead and cancel this. And let's just say that we want to see the gaps that this tool is going to pick up on before we do anything with them. We can actually do that here by coming up to our View drop-down menu and choosing this Show Live Paint Gaps option right here. And in selecting that, right now it doesn't look like the Live Paint tool is picking up on any gaps within our artwork. So that's a good thing. Let's go ahead and talk about maybe painting in some strokes or painting in some edges on top of this artwork. Maybe we want to come in and paint just the edges around the perimeter of the trunk of our tree. Let's go ahead and just select a different color here. Using my arrow keys, I'm going to cycle through until we find black. There we go. I'm going to come over and just maybe paint in what is going to be a stroke on top of the areas where there's edges around the perimeter of the tree trunk. So notice here that the cursor swatch preview is different for the fill as it is for the edges. So we're going to have to find that black color for the edges, and that looks like it right there. So let's go ahead and just paint that edge and paint this edge here. Now notice here that we have our stroke weight set to 1 point. So the stroke weight is actually going to govern how much of a stroke is applied to this edge. So let's go ahead and just select that as a 2-point stroke, and let's go ahead and apply that and see what happens here. You can see our stroke is a little bit thicker and a little more pronounced. We can also set any of the other options for our stroke here within the stroke panel. So if we wanted to have rounded corners, or if we wanted to extend the end of the caps on our strokes, we could do that as well. So now using this Live Paint Bucket tool, notice we can also use a modifier key to switch over to our eyedropper tool. So maybe we want to come back up here and continue painting with this orange. So maybe we just want to click and let's just drag over a few shapes here and see if we can paint several things at once. And we can. You can just simply click and drag with the Live Paint Bucket to paint in multiple shapes at once. So this tool is going to allow you to paint in a more traditional fashion with your vector artwork. Now we can also, if we ever want to come in and select individual paths within these shapes, we can come in with our direct selection arrow and just mouse over, and we can select the path for each individual shape around it, just like so. Now I tell you what, let me come in here and select one of these shapes. Let's go ahead and select this shape here, and let's see what happens if we change the shape of this object here. Let's just go ahead and pinch this in some. You can see that our Live Paint group is automatically adjusting to accommodate the changes in this shape. And you can see here that it's filling in areas that were not filled in previously, and it's making changes to the artwork based on the colors we've assigned with the Live Paint Bucket. Now, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and select our artwork here. And, well, it looks like we're actually picking up on a few gaps down here in the trunk of our tree. You can see that those are highlighted in this red color. So there's the gap detection being visibly shown to us here. Now, if we ever want to revert this live paint group back into standard vector objects, we can do that one of two ways. We can come up here to Object, choose Live Paint, and release the live paint group. Now, doing this is actually going to convert it to non-filled objects with a half-point stroke weight around each object in a black color. So, maybe that's not the outcome you wanted. Let's go ahead and undo that. We can also come up here to Object, choose Live Paint, and choose to expand the live paint group. Now, expanding it here is going to, again, change it back into a normal group if we look in our Appearance panel. Or we can actually come up here to Objects and just choose Expand, and then hit OK on this, and it's going to have the exact same result. So you can see here how using the live paint features in Illustrator really makes painting a little more traditional, or a little bit more like traditional painting. So in this lesson, we've learned about the live painting features inside Illustrator. In the next lesson, we're going to move over and begin talking about masking out objects in Illustrator using a clipping mask.